So welcome everybody to the Practical Tanya. If there's a problem, please make mention of it. If you can't hear me, is it nice and clear?
Sounds good.
I hope so. So we are going to be learning chapter 9 tonight, which is a big step because chapters 1 through 8 were a lot of information. And chapter 9 begins the instruction. Tanya is a book, it's an instructional manual of how to actually achieve purpose and self-control. But to explain to you how to do that, let's first explain the anatomy, the spiritual anatomy. So chapters 1 through 8 were a lot of, it's like a biology lesson in souls. So I'm going to share the screen for a quick review. And we're going to go through some things. Sorry. All right. Practical Tanya, chapter 9. So first of all, I'd like to quickly run over last week. Last week was about the macrocosm from where the animal soul stems. It's called klipa. Klipa literally means shell, and it refers to the sort of metaphysical energy shield that covers the godly force in all creation. And that is ultimately what allows there to be negativity in the world. Because if you saw God, the source of goodness and harmony and interconnectedness with everything, there'd be no bad. It's only because there's a shield, a klipa, a shell on it that we can experience negativity. And it goes in there, we talked about there's two types of klipa. One is the three impure klipas, klipot, which is like opaque. The godly spark is so veiled in that creation, let's say like a pig, that in regards to eating it, you can't interface with it to elevate it. On the contrary, the way you elevate that, a Jew elevates that particular creation is by not eating it, not engaging with it in that case. Then there's other things called permissible kosher pleasures that are called klipas noga, also known as translucent klipa, in the sense of that there is a shell, there is a barrier. It's not just brimming with holiness. It is mundane, but the godly spark is extractable for holy purposes through using it in a higher purpose way, eating for the right reason and so on. So a quick review of chapters 1 through 8. Chapters 1 through 8 were chapter 1 was the animal soul. Chapter 2 introduced us to the godly soul. Chapter 3 introduced us to the 10 powers of the soul. And we start off talking in regards to the divine soul, the 10 powers, 3 intellectual, 7 emotional, and that they all come from the 10 sephirot. But that is what the soul is. It's made up of these 10 powers, intellect and emotional. Chapter 4, we talked about the 3 garments of the soul, of the divine soul. Still, we're just talking about the divine soul at that point. 5, it's mentioned that the special garment of learning, of thought in regards to Torah study is a unique garment that bonds us with God because it's twofold. Chapter 6 spoke about, we said, okay, now everything existed in the godly soul and the divine soul, which is interchangeable, divine soul, godly soul, is in the animal soul. And the 10 powers and 3 garments exist in the animal soul, which are just, intellect and emotions about self-serving pleasure. or sophisticated pleasure, but it's still self-serving. And of course, the three garments that we use to get our animal soul's drive of pleasure, thought, speech, action. 7 and 8, I spoke about before, was about klipa, which is the macrocosmic energy of which all negative things stem from. And the animal soul stems from klipas noga, the kosher-ish klipa that is dealable. It is able to be elevated if you have the right kavan, if you have the intention when you have a kosher hamburger or any kosher pleasure. Any questions on that? Okay, so we're going to move to chapter 9. So chapter 9 is the instructional chapters of Tanya, of like, okay, here's your challenge and here's some tools to deal with your inner struggle that we all have. I thought it was a great title. I saw it, someone give it the title, The Fight for Your Life, the positions of the divine soul and the godly soul. So the first question is, where does your soul or souls reside? Does anybody want to take read the chapter, or want to give their opinion? Where do you think your soul resides? I assume, can everybody still hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
You still hear me, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, so hence my question, where does the soul reside? If anybody wants to take a guess, as I...
Brain, right?
Where? The brain.
The brain.
Okay. Anybody else want to take a guess? All right, so it's we spoke about that it does, the life force does enter the brain first, but we're going to have to qualify that a little bit. All right. The animal soul, let's start there. The animal soul resides. And when I say resides, we're not talking about a physical, like, pulse of the animal soul. It's the obviously a soul is metaphysical and it animates the entire body, but there are places where it's most revealed. And the animal soul resides, i.e. most revealed. It's most expressed in the heart, and specifically in the left ventricle where the blood is. And from there, it extends to the whole body, even to the brain, similar to the way blood works, right? The heart pumps blood, and it goes to all the limbs, including the brain. This is very important to realize that, and we mentioned this in chapter 6, the animal soul is, although it has, it has intellect, it does affect the brain. We said the animal soul has emotions and intellect, but it's primarily felt in the heart, in the emotions, because it doesn't need deep, rational, deep philosophical ideas in order to generate emotions and action. It's kind of simple. It has a drive for self-perpetuation and pleasure, and that's what it wants. And therefore the heart is like the headquarters. The heart being the muscle that pumps the blood. And it says, Ki adam hu nefesh. It says in the Torah, and the Tanya brings it down in this chapter, that the blood is the soul. It doesn't mean literally the blood is the soul, because some religions actually believe the soul is in the blood from that verse. and they won't take a blood transfusion because of that. The blood is perhaps the portal for the animal soul in its nature. The divine soul. The divine soul resides, i.e., it's most manifest in the brain. And that's what you said, Howard. It also is found in the heart's right ventricle where there's no blood. I did a little bit of scientific, just I Googled how the heart works. The left side, I think, pumps the blood out. The right side takes it in. I don't know exactly, but there is a way to reconcile it or to understand even the way we understand the heart to work. But the point is, the divine soul is most manifest in the brain because intellect, even just secular intellect, just using, not religious, your mind is much more objective than the heart, than the emotions. The mind can think about a concept outside of itself. It doesn't have to like it, doesn't have to have feelings for it. It can think any idea. The mind is much more objective. It's also much more humble compared to the heart because the heart, the heart, i.e. the headquarters of the emotions, is all about subjectivity, how I feel about this. The brain doesn't always have to be about the way I think about this. Okay, obviously there's a slant. Everybody has an intellectual slant. But a great thinker can think both sides of the coin without a bias. Because the brain is much more able to absorb realities outside of itself. Any questions? Just gotta go. I think we have some people joining now. So there you have it. The heart is the base of the animal soul. The intellect, the mind, is the base of the animal soul. But they both spill over to each other's domain. We mentioned that the divine soul, although its headquarters is in the intellect, it goes to the right ventricle of the heart, and it can be housed there as well, because you could have God, love, emotion, heart being the physical embodiment of the stores the blood, the passion, which is sort of the physical storage of the emotions. You can have divine emotions. You can have animal emotions. And also, we mentioned before, although the animal soul exists, it's primarily heart and blood and emotions. The blood rises to the brain. The question is, who comes first? Any questions? Or I go back to
Yitzi, I have a question.
Yes.
When you talk about divine emotion versus your animal emotion, is that emotion that's defined by the subject of the emotion is? For example, we talk a lot about feeling awe as opposed to fear, feeling awe by
Right.
Hashem. And is that because it's a feeling directed towards God, then it is necessarily a divine emotion as opposed to an animal emotion?
I'm not getting, you can have awe, or in a more crass form, fear. You can have awe for a mobster, right?
Right. So that would be an animal, but if you're feeling awe of, by being in by observing mitzvot or something like that, if the subject of your awe is God, does that necessarily mean then that is a divine emotion?
It's a good question. It would have to be a true, many people do things in the name of God, right? It would have to be a true intellectual awareness of God. It would have to be a true, awareness of God, and then it's a true emotion. If it's a, if you just put the God label on it, doesn't make it divine soul, because it's not, God. There's a famous story. Rebbe Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev was a great Hasidic master, contemporary of the Alter Rebbe, and in his town in Berditchev, somewhere in Belarus, I guess, it was a big town. There was, the town atheist, right? Like the Jewish atheist was a proud, atheist. So one time, Rabbi Lev Yitzchak of Berditchev, this great scholar, a Kabbalist, he told this atheist, he said, the same God you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. All I'm pointing is that if it is a true awareness of God, contemplation, and it generates either love or awe towards that. Love is in I want to get close to it. Awe is in I'm humbled by it. I'm afraid. I'm careful to touch the divine. Then yeah, that's divine soul emotions. Make sense?
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to say we started early tonight. I put in the email, I don't know if anybody saw. We're starting now at 7:30. I hope that's doable for people. I did record the class, and I will send it out in the email later this week. I just wanted to. There's a question I got before class from somebody about when we talk in Tanya about the neshama, the soul. It uses the feminine tense. She feels, she longs for God. So why is that? And the answer is there's a practical and there's a mystical. The practical reason is Hebrew has masculine and feminine tense in all nouns. Every noun is either feminine or masculine. It's not like in English where it's gender neutral. And the word for soul, neshama, is feminine. That's the practical. The other more mystical reason is that many times the soul is referred to in the feminine because the soul manifesting in the body takes its cue from the way God manifests in the world. The Tanya says the same way the soul, the same way the soul, we can empirically see, manifests itself in the body, animates it, gives it life, fits like a glove of that energy. So too God manifests in the world. God's animating and investing in the world. The term for the aspect of God that animates the world is called Shechina. Shechina means the dweller, the dwelling aspect of God. It's also feminine. I would venture to say there's a strong correlation of the feminine nurturing spirit. And also we talked many times of Chachma and Bina, the seed and the development and the womb, which is the sort of take something and nurturing it, to growing it into its place. So that'd be a more mystical reason of why the soul is referred to in the feminine. Okay. So everybody that's joining us, I wanted to, I don't know if you saw in the email, we're starting the class early. I said there's a new time. It starts at 7:30, so we're a little bit into class already. But I think you'll be able to follow. We just finished saying how the animal soul and his headquarters is in the heart, is manifest in emotions, passion, the same way blood, and that's why, anger, boasting, all those hot-headed things are very passionate, because they come from the heart, which is the base of the animal soul. The godly soul is based in the mind, in the intellect. And they both have emotions and intellect. The question is, what starts? The animal soul really starts with emotions. It's a little bit of information, a little bit of know-how, but it's very instinctive to just want stuff or get angry or be, worrying about your honor or wanting pleasure. It's kind of like automatic to an animal and a human being as well. And then the animal soul will do a great job rationalizing it, getting very sophisticated reasons of why ultimately its primal drive for self-perpetuation and pleasure is just and is objective. It'll come up with reasons and rationales. Well, yeah, this is right. Versus the divine soul starts with what is right. Abstract, intellect, what's the idea? And then after that hard work, or that, it's harder to think, to absorb an idea and a concept of right and wrong, and then you have emotions to stand up or to want, desire what is just and right and good, and to stay away and to be very strong against what is wrong. Very important idea. So I think one practical tip for the practical Tanya is that if it comes really easy, an emotion, you have to question it. Because again, this is not about good or bad. Bad is already, we said, really is not even what the animal soul doesn't come from the impure klipa. We're talking about selfish, self-serving activity and selfless activity. If one comes after thinking, or a lot of thought, it doesn't have to be that every minute, but it came after thinking, questioning, and then coming to a conclusion, and then you have a strong feeling for that, that's perhaps you're on the right track. It's still, nothing is guaranteed. You can make wrong conclusions also, but it would make more sense that the divine soul is somehow the driving this, because you're coming from the idea and then the emotion. But if the emotion comes first, then you're coming up with amazing, very quickly, and the intellect is, buttressing it with ideas and justifications. You got to question that. Okay. Moving along. Now, here's the deal. What does every soul want? What does each soul want? Does the godly soul want to just wax philosophical and, desire, long for the divine? And does the animal soul just want to desire, pizza and honor and getting its way? The answer is they each want everything. This is from the Torah portion that talks about Yaakov and Esau, Jacob and Esau. Speaks about, just in the background, you can read the verses yourself. It says how Rivka, their mother, was pregnant with them and she felt tremendous birth pains. The Medrash says when she would go past a pagan house of worship, she'd feel a kick, like the fetus was trying to, go to that. And when she'd go past the yeshiva or the house of monotheism of Shem of Aver, the baby would kick also. And she's like, what's going on? There's a schizophrenic baby. She went to the wise man, the prophet, Shem, and he said, you're not, why am I like this? And Hashem said through this, the Lord said to her, 2 nations in your womb and 2 kingdoms will separate from your innards. And 1 kingdom will become mightier than the other kingdom, and the elder will serve the younger. 1 nation shall prevail over the nation, or the other nation. And she had the next verses. She had 1 was Esau, and 1 was Jacob. This is brought down. Everything in the Torah, although it's a story, is also a metaphor for divine service. It's also, why telling us these stories. It's not just a history lesson. There's a lot of divine service in here. Esau represents the animal soul. Yaakov represents the godly soul. And 1 nation shall prevail over the other nation. Each one wants the other, which is very interesting. That explains a lot of why Esau and Yaakov, they were fighting for the birthright. Because what did Esau care about the spiritual birthright of the Israelites? Didn't he just want to hunt and eat, lentil soup and stuff? And what does Yaakov care about Esau, having the blessings of the physical world? What does he care about physical? He's a spiritual guy. And the answer is each one wants to be the king of the other. For example, in chapter 9, this is a quote, the body is called a small city, just as 2 kings wage war over a town, which each wishes to capture and rule, that is to say, to dominate the inhabitants according to his will, so they obey him in all that he decrees for them. So too the 2 souls, the divine and the vitalizing animal soul that come from the klipa, wage war against each other out of all the body and all its limbs. And not just the body and the limbs, also your mental capacity. What are you going to spend your time thinking about? What are you going to go to school for? What are you going to spend your days thinking about to achieve? What are you going to speak about? And of course, what are your actions going to be about? So there you have, it's full out war. Everybody's fighting for full control of everything, both intellectual, emotional, spiritual, and physical. To explain this, the divine soul wants to be the one to set the political agenda for the body, for the body's activity, the body's thoughts and speech. Of course, it's going to say the body. It's not going to say, well, go live in a cave and just starve or eat bread and water. Go get married, go have a family, go get a job, but do it all as a means to an end for higher divine purpose. The animal soul not only does it want to get a job so it can get food and pleasure, it actually wants to even take control of the intellectual capacity of the person. To think about the whole day, how can I make more money so I can be more powerful? I can have bigger bank accounts so I can be more important or feel more, or get more pleasure from the money. And I'd even go further. Not only does the animal soul want to take control of the action and to speak about its pleasure and speak about all its, its pleasurable things, about its dining and its kosher dining. We're talking kosher pleasures, and its yacht and all that. But and even wants to start thinking about it the whole day of how do I get make money so I can have all that stuff. It even wants to take over your spirituality. I was listening and preparing for this class to a couple of lectures, some incredible people, and this struck me as so powerful. We tend to think as the animal soul is like this brute, crass drive. Me want food, power, struggle, even if it's very smart, but just a very selfish person, a very crass aims. Not sophisticated, like going to the opera or to going to the Met. That can't be the animal soul. That's too sophisticated. Or someone who reads poetry or is a brilliant philosopher. That can't be, that's an animal soul. Or even a religious leader. Religious leader, how could that be? How could a religious leader be driven by the animal soul? Seemingly a religious leader would be very dedicated to God. And we're talking about a charlatan. We're talking about someone who is very religious per se. Tries their best to be religious. The question is where is this stemming from? A lot of spirituality could be self-serving. And we can't realize, because it's not like a chronology like, oh, I really care for myself, but I don't want to be a lowlife and just eat pizza the whole day and smoke. I'm gonna go do yoga on a cliff and feel really good about myself. It comes all together. Animal soul and the godly soul, it's all in one body, it's all in one psyche. You have to be this is how we learn Tanya, to know conceptually what's coming first. It's very possible a lot of our spiritual activity can be driven by the animal soul. It's not a bad thing. Remember, the animal soul is not bad. The animal soul is not, it's not immoral, it's just amoral. But its primary goal is feeling good, is pleasure. Pleasure takes many forms. Food, relationships, even kindness and spirituality can be pleasurable. I'm going to talk about that at the end as well. I'm going to tell you a story about a great Hasidic master whose name is Rabbi Nachum Chernobyl. Before Chernobyl became famous in the late 80s, Chernobyl was a big Hasidic, the home of a big Hasidic dynasty. And I missed one question before I tell you the story. Carol, so what about intuition? It's a very good question. Intuition. Is all intuition good? I think intuition is important, but intuition alone probably comes from a lot of preconceived ideas one has, and they absorb that they agree with. We have to go back to the ideas. We're going back to before the intuition, because intuition, I think, is susceptible to being just self-serving. Possibly. I think it also could be not. There is holy intuition, but I don't think intuition is automatically a proof either way. Okay, back to the story. Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl, he had he was a Hasidic Rebbe. A lot of people sought his counsel. He actually, a lot of people would give him money because he was the Rebbe of the community. He would not keep any money overnight. He would distribute all to the poor, the widows, the orphans. Whatever he had in his drawer, he would distribute before he went to sleep. He said, I can't sleep knowing I have unused funds. There's people that are needy. One time, someone came to him, and he had poor people come to him and rich people. One person was a rich follower of his, came to him, gave him a very generous donation, 500 rubles, which is a lot of money, worth probably, $10,000, $20,000. He leaves, and then within an hour, other people come to him, and one poor man comes, says, I have good news and bad news. My daughter is engaged, and to a wonderful man, but I have to provide the dowry. That's the way it worked back then. I have to provide the dowry, but I know they're going to call off the wedding. It'd be very, very embarrassing to my daughter, to my family, and I don't know what to do. So Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl thought, oh my gosh, this is divine providence. God just sent me, not so long ago, someone that gave me a very hefty donation, 500 rubles. And this man needs 500 rubles. I think he asked him, how much he said 500 rubles. Wow. I'm going to give it to him. Like $15,000. And then about a split second later, he thought, wait a second. 500 rubles, a lot of money to give to one person. I meet tens of people throughout the day. I should probably give it to everybody. Give everybody a generous mid-sized donation, 50 ruble. Still a lot of money. Maybe I should give this guy 50 ruble, 100 ruble, but to give him the whole pot, it's a lot. So what would you do? What would you do? What do you think was the correct? They're both good, right? One is giving one guy a lot of money, and one's splitting up. What do you think is the holy ethic here? Anybody want to take a stab?
Is it giving the guy the money because there's a specific goal intended by giving him the money? There's a specific mitzvah that happens, whereas spreading it out, you're not sure where that money's going to go.
It could be. That's one way to look at it. It could be he knew he's going to have a lot of poor people coming in. He knew it wasn't like once in a while. But I'll tell you what he decided. He said giving the man the money was the right thing. That came from the divine soul. And the other calculation to give to the other, to split it up and spread it out throughout the day was come from the animal soul. And he said, why? What came to him first? The godly soul, right? The first thing, to give it to the man, give the man the money for the dowry. But once he had a good thought, suddenly another thought crept into his mind. Why did that thought come second? Why didn't it come first? So he said like this, because my animal soul knew if it was to say, don't give any money, I wouldn't listen. I know that I'm a custodian to help others. Of course, I'm not going to hold it back and not give the man money. But it's going to start saying, well, give it, but it's not responsible to give it to one person. Would come with very holy arguments, sophisticated arguments, which is really about stopping him from doing the mitzvah at hand. This is gold. A lot of time we think our struggles is between good and bad. Bad. I don't think we struggle with doing the wrong thing that much. Sometimes, I'm not saying we're immune, but many times it's a good or a lesser good. A good that is pure and divine, that is objective truth, and one that is stemming from the animal soul that is subjective truth. Very powerful story.
If you agree with it. I would get some sleep that night and think it over anyway.
Okay. I hear your point. We're going to move on to the next slide. What's the game? I do have to end on time tonight, so we have a few more minutes. What is the game plan of the divine soul? Basically, as we said, the divine soul is housed in the mind, so it's very intellectually based. Intellectual pondering, it uses its intellectual capacity to be filled with God, to really wrap its mind about God's presence being real and higher purpose, and have it generate emotions, and it flow over to transform the passion of the animal soul for holiness. I want to point out that we're not supposed to suppress the animal soul. And we're going to talk more about this later. The animal soul is like an animal. It says the ox, with the power of an ox, you can plow a field. There's a certain benefit of the animal soul, very strong passion. But you have to change around from the default, which is self-oriented passion. And when we think about Hashem, that's the lifelong journey, to think about Hashem. We learn, we try to see God's truth, God's presence. What does God want from us? What are mitzvahs? What are Hashem's mitzvahs? It says that the same way that God is merciful, it says we have to walk in God's ways. What does it mean, walk in God's ways? So the Talmud says, the same way God exhibits mercy, we should exhibit mercy. The same way God exhibits kindness, we should exhibit kindness. We try to think about what is the right thing? What is God's truth? What's objective morality and goodness? And we work hard. It's hard. It's the long, short way. It's a lot of work. But once you start, sublimating your mind, your perspective, it starts to generate emotions for that. And not only do you generate weak emotions, you can even show the animal soul. The animal soul wants what's good for it. You say, it's not good to be involved in going to the casino or just be working for your own, for yourself. You should be working for eternal stuff, for good stuff, for lasting stuff. And when you change the animal soul's perspective, the intellect, the divine soul's intellect, harnessing the animal soul, it changes the passion of the animal soul for that. And that's really the goal. So it's not about fight your animal soul by repression. Expand your mind, learn Torah, learn Tanya, talk it over. Don't just learn in a book. Talk it over. Chavrusa means you talk it over with a rabbi, talk it over with a chavrusa, with a partner. Really get into it. And once you get a little bit of it's a lot of work. It's not like, you're gonna have one session, $9.99 or your money back. It's a lot of work. So we're going to just go last slide. I'll answer a question. What's the game plan of the animal soul? The game plan of the animal soul is as follows. It's the exact opposite, right? As I said, it wants to take its primal selfishness and fill your mind up with that and fill everything, and even fill up your spirituality. As I mentioned before, spirituality is very delicate. You don't want it to be subjective, self-serving spirituality. You want it to be objective spirituality, which the Torah, which you have to have humility, learn, and absorb ideas outside yourself. And it gives an example. The parable of the Kabbalah, it says that why does God do this? So one reason, why does God make this struggle? The animal soul is fighting the divine soul. So there's a story of a great king that had a prince who was a prized, beautiful child, brilliant, kind, wonderful, midos. And he wanted to really test him to see what he's made of. So he hired a harlot the king hired a harlot to try to seduce the prince. And she knew that this was just a setup to test the prince to overcome. But she had a job to do. So she used her wiles to try to seduce the prince. But the prince prevailed. He stuck by his morality and overcame. And of course, his father was so proud. And his successor is going to be this moral person that can withstand temptation. That's why the animal soul is given all this power. Is not to just taunt you, but it's that you can overcome it and become a partner in really choosing good. And when you choose good, you really become a partner with Hashem in your life, and the good is earned good. Okay, we're going to take a question before I have to go, because I have to go to Mincha. There was a question about intuition. So I answered it earlier, Alan, but I'm going to answer it again. I'm not positive, but I get the feeling that intuition is overrated. I believe in intuition. I think intuition comes from a place of a lot of experience and knowledge. And, a lot of times you want to make the right decision of what's going to be good or bad. your intuition will come to use. I believe there can be intuition stemming from the animal soul and intuition stemming from the godly soul. You really have to use what we spoke about before to know. To really know, is it coming, is it about gratification and then it's housed in intellect and objective, quote unquote objective truth? Or is it coming intellectual based first, morality based first, hard discussions and then the emotions and the desire? I think you have to, I'm not positive intuition can always be one or the other. Any other questions before I have to go? I don't, Alan, you have to unmute yourself.
What about our leader Yehuda, who was the son of Jacob? And I think the Torah makes a big contrast between Joseph, who can withstand a lot of temptation, and Yehuda, who seems to be the opposite.
It's a great question, and there's tons of parallels. It's a whole class unto itself. So you can you can speak to me after class. We can talk. Wishing you a wonderful week. I'd say homework for the week is maybe try to see where are your thoughts of what's right or wrong this week. The right thing. Is it coming from divine soul, intellectual, based, really trying to be objective, or is it more instinctive, which might be coming from emotional based animal soul? Have a wonderful week.
Thank you.